Hi, my name is Santiago, and I am the most adventurous man in El Paso. And when I drink wine, I drink the Primo Vino. And today I'd like to talk about countries. Every country has a signature grape. Some of them, for example, Italy is known for Sangioveses. Yeah, they got Cabernets and Merlots, Montepulcianos. You have Germany is known for Rieslings. They got a lot of sweet wines and a lot of dry wines. They're really good at making the sweets and dry whites. Let's see who we have there. We have France, champagnes. They're known for champagnes, and a few others. You have, let's see, you have Spain. Spain, known for their granachas and their tempraníos. Chile. Here's an interesting one, Chile. Chile's known for their Carmenères, the Carmenère grape. Now, the Carmenère is actually a French grape. Originally, it's a French grape. But over 90, probably around 95% of all Carmenères that are made today come from Chile. It's very rare that you'll come across a Carmenère made somewhere else. Now, there are small vintages. Some people are making them. I think there's maybe one in California and in France and that. But the story behind the Carmenère is in the late 1800s, they shipped down some vines of the Carmenère grape down to Chile. To plant them down there and grow them. Well, the next couple, 3 years after that, all the vines in France died off from a disease. Now, the vines in Chile had the same disease, but because of the altitude and the climate, they survived. So to this day, over 95% about, or more or less, all Carmenères come from Chile. So it's a really interesting story that a French grape becomes another country's signature wine. Now, this, what do you call a signature wine? Well, signature wine simply means that for some reason, actually there's a lot of reasons there, and they know what they are. Carmenère grape grows really good in Chile. Their climate, their altitude, their soil, their rainfall, I mean, all this is what makes the grape and then the winemaker making their wine. Now, it doesn't mean that the Carmenères in France aren't any good. It just means that for some reason that country is really good at making the Carmenère. Australia, they're really good at making Shiraz. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to find a really good Shiraz in California or in Italy or something. It just means, for the most part, they are probably the #1 sellers and makers of Shiraz because they're really good at it. And it has to do with their country, the soil, the climate, the sun, all this stuff. Spain. Spain is known for their Grenaches and Tempraníos. Well, their soil, climate, for some reason, they make some of the best Grenaches and Tempraníos. Every country has a story, and that's what's really interesting about the world of wine. It's if you study the country and you study their signature grape and you study how much of a grape comes out of that and why, and you really get intrigued and you come across some of these stories like the Carmenère, from France to Chile. There's so many stories out there, and when it comes to each country, take for France. France is known for their champagne. Yet Bordeaux's come from France. Now, here's where a lot of people get confused. A Bordeaux is not a grape. Champagne is not a grape. Now, champagne, this is interesting. There's only one place you can buy champagne from, and it only comes from one place in the whole world, and that's Champagne, France. Champagne doesn't come from anywhere else in the world but Champagne, France. Now, that's not to say that other countries can't make sparkling wine that tastes exactly like champagne. They just can't call it champagne because champagne is after the city, the town that it originated from. That's why they're the only place in the world that can sell champagne. Also, like D'Asti's in Italy. D'Asti's associated with Moscato d'Asti's. Oh, it's a sweet wine, it's Moscatos. Well, actually, D'Asti has nothing to do with the sweet wines per se. You have dry whites and dry red D'Asti's from Italy. Asti is a town inside the Piedmont Valley of Italy. So they put their name, their kind of signature is Asti. So you got Moscato d'Asti's, you got other grapes that are D'Asti's, dry whites, dry reds. It's a region. Like Tuscany. Tuscany's a region, it's not a grape. Another one is, let's see, Champagne's Bordeaux. Bordeaux is a place, it's not a grape. There's a lot of different grapes. You look at a Bordeaux, you get a French Bordeaux, and you look at the kind of grapes that they made, you'll find that a lot of them are blends. A lot of Bordeaux's are blends. You got Merlots, you got Cabernets, you got other different grapes that are widely known in France, and it's a blend. Some of them are strictly a Merlot, but they don't say Merlot. They just say Bordeaux. You have to read the label on the back to see what kind of grape. And a lot of times, they're not going to say on the label. You have to look it up on the internet and in order to research what type of grapes went into that particular wine. So we have, what's another interesting one? Oh, let's see, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, let's see, I talked about Chile, in Spain. You come across some wines, say Rioja on it. Okay, Rioja is not a grape either. It's a region in Spain. Many different types of grapes are grown there in Rioja. It's the same thing as Napa. If you want to look at it, it's the same thing. Napa makes a lot of different wines. So people will say, oh, I love Napa wine, or I love Sonoma wine. Now, other countries, and you talk about it, they may not have any experience as to what Napa is or what a Sonoma is. They say, oh, is that a grape? No, it's a region. And it goes both ways. So a lot of other countries, and that's the interesting part about the wine, is the more you study it, the more you study the countries, the regions, and where these wines come from, and what kind of grapes are grown there and why. Is that their signature grape? Is that what they mostly produce? Because for some reason, they're really good at making the Shirazes in Australia. They're really good at making Sangioveses in Italy, and so on. So, another question we always get is on this line, particular subject I'm talking about, is a person will come in and say, and they have this special wine, and it's from this vineyard, and they love, this is the best wine in the world to them. They love this wine. And whatever grape it might be, whatever vintage or vineyard or country it comes from. And they'll ask, oh, do you have this wine? And we'll say, oh, sorry, we don't have it. I says, oh, well, do you ever pick it up? Says, no, I've never heard of that wine before. And they look at you and say, how could you not have ever heard of, this is the best wine in the world? How could you not have heard of it? I mean, you're a wine store, you're a five-star restaurant or whatever you might be, you're known for the wines. Well, and they're surprised. This is, oh, how can he not know? I mean, he's not a very good wine sommelier or person of wines, or, I mean, he's an owner or whatever, or manager or whatever, and you never heard of this wine? It says, well, here's the answer to that question. Let's take one bottle, okay? Let's go to every winemaker, every vineyard, in every state, in every country around the world. Now, let's say one vineyard, they make 15 different wines, Merlots, Cabernets, Zinfandels, whites, reds, sweets. So they got 5 different wines that they make. Okay, so you're going to take one bottle of each one. You're going to do the same thing with every vineyard around the world. You're going to take all those bottles and put them in a warehouse. Now, how long do you think it's going to take for one person, yourself, to taste all those wines? A few months? 2 years? You'd be surprised what the answer is. The answer to that question is it will literally take you 3 lifetimes to taste all those wines. And I'm talking about 1 year, one vintage that's produced in 1 year's time, one bottle from every type of wine that every winemaker makes from around the world. Put it in a warehouse. It'll take you 3 lifetimes. It's impossible for anyone to taste all the wines that are made in 1 year's time from every vineyard around the world. It's impossible. Now you can study and pretty much, if you got a really good memory, you might be able to name them all off, but to taste all their wines, and it'd be really hard to actually name a vineyard and say, oh, they make all these types of wines. And I mean, you'd have to really have a good memory. Wine masters are incredible, okay? Wine masters, they'll take minimum, in most cases, minimum 10 years of studying. Now, studying means all you're doing is studying wine. You're not working. You're studying wine. You're traveling 8, 10 hours a day, every day. Okay, you might take a day off here and there, but that's all you're going to do for 10 years. And if you're lucky, if you've got a good memory, you've got a good sense of smell and taste, you might pass the test after 5 tries. That's how difficult it is to be a wine master. So, me, I am a wine lover, just like you. I'm a wine lover. And that's pretty much all I think I'll be, because I know what that test is like, and it's insane. It's insane. So anyway, you know, how you have your favorite wine from your favorite vineyard, and nobody knows, nobody carries it, you can't find it anywhere, it's really difficult. Here's my suggestion on that. You're hooked on that one wine. And there's a reason why you're hooked on it. It's your palate, it's your memory, everything's by association. You love it for a reason. And to be hooked on one particular wine, that's the downfalls that come from it. Every time you travel, it's going to be impossible to find your favorite wine. I really advise you to broaden your taste, your likes. If it's Merlot and it's only Merlot you like, or it's the Chardonnay, and that's the only Chardonnay you like, I would really suggest you try other wines and try and broaden your knowledge and of your taste and smells of other wines. And I guarantee you, you're going to find a better wine than what you think is the best. I guarantee you will. All you got to do is look. They're out there. There's a lot of really good wines out there. So if you're stuck on one, it's fine. I mean, if you got a good supply of it, you know, and it's reliable, and you know, the rest of your life, hey, if that's what makes you happy, then absolutely, I'm behind you 100%. But if you're the type that likes to travel, you're going to have a hard time unless you take all your own wine with you. So I would really suggest, you know, broaden your experiences with different vineyards of the same grape, you know, and you're going to be surprised. I guarantee you're going to find a wine as good and better than what you think is the best. So anyway, the world of wine, countries, the signature grapes. It's really interesting how certain grapes end up in a certain country and how they become a signature wine. A lot of times they come across it by accident. Oh, here's another really good one. This is a really good example. Ice wine. There's only different places you can make ice wine. It has to be cold climate, okay, like Canada, Germany. Ice wine was actually made by accident. Back in, geez, I don't know, it was 100, 200 years ago in Germany, the neighboring country, Austria, somewhere in that region, the winemaker was trying to make a certain wine, and back in those days, there's no weather reports. You never know when an ice storm is going to come. I mean, you're sitting there and you got 70, 80-degree weather, and you're watching your grapes every day, and you want the grapes to get a certain size, and so you can get that perfect wine that you want to make. So you're kind of pushing the limit, going a little further to get those grapes just like you want them. And all of a sudden, you get an early snowstorm, a freeze. Your entire crop freezes. Now, back then when the crop freezes, your grape freezes, it's no good. You can't make any wine out of it. So, being a winemaker, I believe, if I remember what I read, you become a little embarrassed. Your neighboring winemakers ask, hey, did you do your crop before the freeze? So everybody else did it because they figured, just the way the weather's been going, they didn't want to take the risk, so they did their crop, but you didn't. So he went ahead and took all those frozen grapes and made sweet wine out of it. And he had to, because he had to pay bills. He had to survive. He needed money. I mean, how is he going to survive if he can't? His entire crop is frozen. So he made a sweet wine out of it and bottled it, and it came out so good. Ice wine. It tastes like liquid honey. And oh my God, the flavors that are in it are extraordinary. And it's a super sweet wine. But he made a ton of money on it. And so that was that one winemaker discovered ice wine. And from then on, he would make a lot of it every year that he could, and he would deliberately let his grapes, his crop go until the first freeze. That's the problem with ice wine too, even to this day. When is that freeze going to come? Because the longer you wait, the more grapes fall on the ground. As the grapes fall on the ground, they become no good. Now your crop is getting smaller and smaller. So it's a gamble. That's why ice wine is so expensive. One, it's a risk. Two, it's not going to be a big crop. And three, an early freeze means a big crop. A late freeze means a small crop. So anyway, there's a lot of good stories like that in every country, and how wine, certain wines became as they are, ice wines, Moscatos, champagnes, all those things. Carmenères, and I have to say, in my travels down to Santiago, Chile, is the first time I ever came across the Carmenère. And I tasted it and says, oh my God, it is so good. For many years, they mistook it for Merlot, but when they did a DNA test on it, it wasn't a DNA on some of these vines and vineyards down there. They were actually a Carmenère. So some of the Merlots that were sold back in the day, they thought they were Merlot grapes, vines, and they were actually Carmenère. So anyway, I mean, it's really interesting stories. And that's what gets you hooked on these wines. And it's the more study you do, the more you're going to want to taste that particular wine. And like I said before, your palate can be trained. It can be re-educated, and you can train your palate to love every wine in the rainbow if you want it to be. It's up to you. You don't have to, but you like your certain white wines. That's fine, but venture out into all the different white wines there are, and you're going to find a lot of really good ones. I guarantee it, you will. So, wines and countries and their wines, their signature grapes. It's amazing how much wine is made around the world. It is literally in the billions of bottles every year made around the world. Billions. Every year. Billions of bottles are filled with wine every year. That's how many wine drinkers there are around the world. It's amazing. So anyway, my fellow winemakers, wine lovers, my fellow wine lovers, I think that's all I needed to cover for today. And to all of you, vino up. because I do. Oh, it is so good. So,